Game loaded.
Hello, everybody, and welcome once again back to the channel. I know I haven't been streaming as much as I want to, only doing podcasts and then doing these Let's Talks and Script Doctors. Um, so, hello and welcome. So, we're going to be talking about Dragon Age 2, and the reason why we're going to be talking about Dragon Age 2 is because, I did this a long time ago. Here's where we get a couple of caveats from the beginning. First, uh, if you want my full breakdown of Dragon Age 2, I put it up in my YouTube channel. Let me lessons learned on YouTube. I probably had to remake those videos because audio quality is very poor. I had a crappy mic and all that. So, but I break down in some of the stuff I talk here, I did that back in the day. But really, I was thinking actually doing about KOTOR 2 rather than a Dragon Age 2, but this popped up in my feed, and I said, "Hey, why not talk about this?" Dragon Age 2 writer says the Snyder Cut would make a city bigger and more alive. Uh, this is, a former writer, David Gator, of the Dragon Age team, or before he was a former Dragon Age and former BioWare employee, talked about in a Twitter thread about how he would want to go back. He's now he's co-founder, creative director of Summerfall Studios, an indie game dev in Melbourne, Australia. I guess he left not only BioWare but Canada as well. So yeah. So now that I look at it, I should have shaved. Ugh. Anyway. Anyway, so he talked about how he make the game bigger and all that. I was like, well, if that's the case, then I guess I can revisit this in Script Doctors. What I would do if I were to remake or fix the narrative of Dragon Age 2. Like I said, a couple of caveats. I talked about this before on my YouTube channel a long time ago, many moons ago, I think 6 years ago, 7 years ago, probably close to 10 years. Second, critique of the game is not a critique of the audience or the player. If you actually enjoy Dragon Age 2, this is not directed at you like, oh, you like something that I think sucks. And this is the different opinions, right? If you love it, then by all means, enjoy it. You enjoyed it before, you enjoy it again. I like to put it in the category of criticism of the object, in this case, the game. It's not necessarily criticism of the subject, being the people behind both the game and people who enjoy the game, right? Also, yes, hindsight is 2020. It's very easy to talk about these things years after we have a lot of information behind it, etc. Like, of course, now we're going to talk about this because reasons. Even though, it's, we at the time they only had about 16 months to make it all that. That does a factor in what happened there, but it's not wholly the reason why it went sideways, I think. Nor does it preclude an effective analysis of it, critique of it, and doing a thought experiment like this with how would you change it. So, without further ado, let's start with the process. Let's start at the beginning. Well, before we do that, let's start with the concept of premise, the narrative premise of Dragon Age 2. In the commercials to Dragon Age, the trailers and all that, the experience was sold as this was Hawke's rise to power, right? That you were going to go to Kirkwall and you were just going to become, a powerful character politically and also personally and all that. That doesn't happen in the game. You get some measure of political power, but the focus is not really on Hawke anyway, so neither the narrative or the gameplay really reflect this, particularly the gameplay. But the narrative also fails. And like in many of my script doctors that I've done before with Fallout, with Mass Effect, and Mass Effect Andromeda particularly, and the one I want to do with KOTOR 2, the future, um, the real problem is almost always want to focus. So I want to refocus back on the character of Hawke. Uh, I want to focus on 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 the hmm, on all of that. I want That's what I want to focus about, and I want that to be the takeaway, right? So let's take that premise. Let's go with the premise of this is about Hawk's rise to power. So everything that we do here is going to be in the service to that. Okay. Okay. So um, we have the opening, the prologue, where the family, which is Hawk, let's say who I have to remember all the I know Carver, their mother, and Bethany. Uh, Bethany are escaping Lordaeron, right? They're escaping the blight. I wouldn't change any of that except for one significant thing. People are like, "Oh, why would you change that?" I'll explain in a moment. I would not have a sibling death, right? There's Hawk is the older sibling, and then Carver and Bethany, or Bethany and Carver, B before C, ladies before gentlemen, I suppose. It's gonna be traditional that way. One of them dies by fiat, by cutscene, right? By the way, I would not change the framing device. There's no real problems with framing device. It's just Varric. I like Varric a lot, and him narrating the events of this is not really a problem. I mean, it was misused. A great character, great voice actor. I also like Cassandra, especially in Inquisition. So I will not. There's no need to change it. It's just a matter of changing the actual narrative, not the framing device. So you have a boss fight. I would have a boss fight with the ogre where if you lose badly, or maybe there's a timer, then your sibling can die, but not necessarily, right? Um, of course, you would have the death of Wesley, right? Which I think has far more impact because one of the things, this is one thing that happens in the games a lot. Your family essentially is taken away, ripped away. I think in service of both drama and also for you to depend on the other characters. Like, oh, hey, you lost your siblings, but hey, here's this moody elf that wants to kill all mages. Let's find out more about him. He's far more interesting than your boring siblings, right? I would not kill the siblings, at least not yet. So the Witch of the Wild shows up. Forgot her name. Well, one of her titles really. She saves the day. You go to Kirkwall. I'm not changing that. The major change happen and this would be not part of the prologue. This will actually be part of Act One. You get a choice after you meet your slimy, lying through his teeth uncle. You get a choice in order to get inside to go gain entry to Kirkwall because you're refugees from Ferelden and nobody Kirkwall wants you. So you say join a mercenary company with your siblings and Aveline, or join a small group. Now, in the game, you make the choice, and there's time scale, 6 months, and that's it. That was a major wasted opportunity. Instead, what should have happened would have been that you actually play out those 6 months, and that choice would be narratively important because it shows what type of hawk you're trying to be. With a mercenary company, you are being basically playing nice with the nobles, being above not above the law, but part of the law because mercenaries are technically lawful groups, technically, although they do shady things. But if you're being smuggler, then you're clearly outside of the law, right? And also that's what started with a lot of the narrative conceit of the rivalry slash friendship system. I never liked the original. It doesn't make any sense. It's like, oh, let's use the term rivalry. Has anybody actually read a Webster's dictionary definition of what rivalry is? I mean, I know that using the dictionary definition of anything is extremely limiting, but it's a start, right? Then maybe you go to the Wikipedia about rivalry and explore the concept. It says like, no, it's all about setting up romances where, enemies to frenemies to romance, even though they're still, they hate your guts, but they'll still sleep with you, which is, no, that's no, doesn't work for me at all. Might work for you, but it's the enemies to lovers trope is one that it's so abused and so badly used effectively. It's just like it's the problem with that is it has a conceit that the tension between actual enemies, people who don't actually like each other, is at the same frequency and the same as actual people who actually are passionate about each other. It has to be a good setup. I think the one that did it very well was Shira. Ironically enough, if you think that being the cartoon being well written is bad, or would be super surprising, Saturday morning cartoon style thing. But just a Saturday morning cartoon. That's what Shira was. But I think they did it very well. And I've seen some other examples, but that's rare. It's not like, oh, they hate each other. Most of the time, it's used in the form of, the boy who pulls the hair of the girl, and the girl complains, and people tell the girl, don't complain because that shows that he likes you. No, it shows that he's being a bully, right? He's a jackass. This kid needs to be put in his place and taught a lesson that that's not something you're supposed to do. It's wrong. So let's not encourage that type of thinking. Thank you very much. So, but here starts the tension. For example, as you join the company, eventually you rise in ranks in either the mercenary company or the smuggler group, and you start making connections with Anders. If, for example, smugglers are smuggling, um, not only lyrium and some other things, but also say people in and out of Kirkwall, um, especially mages. Um, if, for example, the mercenaries are maybe hired to track down a criminal or a family member or someone who is a family member, maybe something happens later in the game, you might be tracked down. A family hires you to track down their wayward mage child before the Templars get to them. So, and you run into Anders. Now, if you're a smuggler, of course, Isabella would be a thing that you start developing. Varric is a great character because Varric has both feet, one in the Merchants Guild. It says Dwarven Merchant Guild, but it's mostly dominated by dwarves, but it's not exclusively dwarf, surface dwarves. And of course, the Carta, which again dominated by dwarves, but not exclusively dwarf. And he's a rogue who's a dasher member of the Merchants Guild in Kirkwall, so he has a lot of money and position, but he also, again, he's a rogue, ergo he probably works with or has ties with the Carta. And actually said that later on that he pays a lot of money for the Carta not to mess with certain characters that are in Hawk's party. So one of the things that would happen is that these characters would have their own reasons to hook up with Hawk, not simply romantically, but just work with Hawk. And not be there and stay with Hawk just because they're Hawk sexual, right? Just because it's a main character. Main characters, automatically assume to be a magnetic personality, and they're just gonna stick with them. No, there has to be reasons, right? Isabella's looking for, maybe she's looking for the book, right? The artifact that she's talking about. She uses a smuggler maybe to hide it, or move it somewhere else. And you're not told what it is. It's a closed box. It's like, okay, never mind. Or she's looking for muscle in the form of mercenaries to back her up, because people are trying to kill her, right? Or she's afraid the Qunari are after it, that sort of thing. So you start introducing the characters way, making those connections. They start helping each other slowly but surely. That's what happened. And as you go along, the situation continues, and it culminates with the expedition. Right? You make a name for yourself in the city. It's not simply you're simply told that you make a name for yourself. You literally do the missions that lead you to be in charge of whatever group you join in the first place. End up killing or driving away the leader, or making the leader part of the group. Like, okay, I accept Hawk as such a magnetic personality or strong enough that I yield to them, etc. There could be a couple of choices there, and that serves as a basis for them joining the expedition. Right? Varric's brother is at first reticent, but Varric and your own actions, instead of just simply showing up like, hey, we got money, we got these 50 gold pieces, let's join up. It's like, no, we've done missions for Varric and for his brother, and so we've proven ourselves. And another thing I would change, which I really lamented the fact that this changed, was that the system in Dragon Age Origin was a century system. a money system which a century was 100 to 1. What do I mean by that? In most Dungeons and Dragons games, which Bioware originally made games, and Dragon Age is sort of a spin-off of that. It's their own version of the D&D game, their own homebrew campaign, if you will. The ratio of copper, silver, and gold is 10 to 1. 10 coppers make 1 silver, 10 silver makes 1 gold piece. 1 gold piece, right? Just repeated that, so forgive me for doing that. The exchange rate, if you will, in Origins was 100 to 1. 100 copper pieces make 1 silver piece. 100 silver pieces make 1 gold piece, which made gold really valuable, right? Having 100 gold pieces was a fortune, right? So here's like, oh, you just get 50 gold pieces, like, it actually would show, how far you have to climb to really get into the kind of society where people just trade gold pieces, like, I don't know, like nothing, like tissues, right? Like paperwork, right? Just gold, you literally see the tiers of humanity, right? The people who are poor or destitute can only afford to carry a couple of coppers, if any, in their pockets for just meager food, while the very rich live in the land of gold, silver, and gold, particularly gold, right? Merchants trading silver, merchant class, middle class, and then the rich people, the nobility trading gold and all that. So that's something I would reinstitute. You join this tradition. I would again not have the situation where if one of your siblings doesn't join the expedition, they essentially go away. Either they're if they go with the expedition, either you have to have them join the Grey Wardens, or they die. And if they don't, they go their own separate way, or they're if your mage sibling doesn't go with you, she gets captured by the Templars and she has to join the circle. If you tell Carver not to join, I think he joins the Templars, right? Especially if you're a mage. I wouldn't have that just yet, because there's something about the siblings that's very important. Also, along the way, you may have to make several decisions with your recruit more people, like Fenris, right? Fenris, you have reports of a good fighter that is, slumming it out in with the city elves. So, hey, you recruit them, especially for the mercenaries, but also for your smugglers. Maybe you're smuggling into the city or out of the city, right? If you're a smuggler, or if you're a mercenary, you're just looking for a backup, or you hire to hunt them down, right? And you realize that they're hunting down a slave, and you make the decision: do you back up the people who are, trying to capture them, or do you actually say, screw it, I don't believe in slavery, I'm gonna side with Fenris, right? Again, make those decisions be your character decisions. Thank you, Chapelmon. Welcome to the chat. Yeah, we're talking about the opening of the game. Make it a situation where both Hawk wants to do these things. Remember, it's all about Hawk's rise to power, and his decisions have to be, whether they're selfless Hawk, goody two shoes Hawk, whether it's sarcastic Hawk or Red Hawk, the selfish Hawk. There has to be a reason why Hawk does these things, other than why, because other people want, right? His right to power shouldn't be just because he wants to take, his mother wants to get her position back in the city, because he wants that position. Or should I say they, because Hawk is a hybrid character. That could be both sexes and 3 classes, right? Your dealings with your siblings, which are party members and other party members, can be something that they're based on their motivations as well as your motivations. Now, I mentioned about Anders. First of all, humorous Hawk, yeah. The Velana was a character in both. Anders comes from a DLC, which is Dragon Age Awakening. And there was another character called Velana. In fact, the 2 characters, the hybrid character that is Anders, and Vengeance, are basically 2 characters literally molded into one. One possesses the other. Here is a decision that could branch. Either if you can have Velana, which really was a character that was out for vengeance, and they show up in the city for whatever reason, looking for revenge to kill more humans, whatever it is, and they have vengeance. But she's an elf, so her cost would be more pro elf than pro mage, perhaps. So that's a bit problematic. Or you have Anders and no vengeance. Because Anders doesn't need it. And there's another problem that the narrative has. Depending too much on is it magic or is it mundane, right? It's mind control or demonic possession. Not to say you can't use those tropes or variations of those tropes, but using it every single time to kind of justify why people go bad every single time. Uh, Replace Anders and Meryl with Velana. Yeah, actually, I do like Meryl. Although you could see Meryl be substituted with Velana uh, as well, because actually Meryl's take is more like Velana's. Like, in fact, if you have Velana instead of Meryl, you wouldn't really have the what's called the forest elves. I forgot the name. I know there's the city elves. I forgot the name for the other elves. Um, you just have Velana, right? And she would be there doing research and all that, and going to the mountain and all that. If you have Meryl, I wouldn't have Meryl be the whole storyline where she gets exiled. Just seems too blunt and too unnecessary. I never liked the endings, like Dalish, the Dalish elves. Thank you. I would have Meryl be more like she has her own agenda fixing the mirror, but I would have her as a liaison to the Dalish elves, and I should have the Dalishes move about. We'll talk about them in reference to having a bigger city and a bigger environment, which is something that the game also requires. Um, more variety in locations and whatnot. Um, she would be more of a liaison with you, and whenever you have to deal with the elves or you invite her to join her, and she actually earns money and resources for her clan, right? And learns and becomes more powerful, eventually taking the role of the first, right? She's the second and becomes the first. Um, Not everybody in her clan would be happy with it, but that's fine, right? You know, there'll still be some conflict there. And I didn't completely hate the whole thing with the mirror. It's just that the way it was written was. But as you're doing the Act One, which you roll from taking over one of the two groups that you chose to join and go on an expedition, you also take the amulet and make sure that the Witch of the Wells actually is not dead, and she becomes a dragon, and she tells you those very cryptic words, which in the original game make no sense because you have no control whatsoever of your own destiny, so your decisions don't matter. So whatever. um, and you go on the expedition, and I would allow for Varric's brother to be influenced by the Red Lyrium. That's pretty cool. I mean, you can use that trope once in a while, but not always. Uh, you know, and so that would happen, and you would get the goal, and you come out, and so you now would move not to be immediately nobility. I would actually leave that to Act Two, because that happens in Act One, but again, it's sort of very rushed. It's like, oh yeah, you go to the mansion, you kill everybody, you get the deed, and now you're nobility. No, and he goes. Now we go into Act Two, and here's where we go into expanding the city. I would have more wilderness locations. Probably having a second city. There's a character comes from another city. At least one location when they visit that city, like their old home or trading market, something like that. And I would certainly expand the city, have more people, have more levels as well. Essentially, Kirkwall as it is rich, poor, miserable. I would have miserable, right? Poor, middle class, artisan class, and then rich. So you start living with your slimy uncle. You gain the money from the expedition and whatever you, and as leader of the mercenary company or the smuggler ring. You move into the middle class. Valana will want to go since she be warden, assuming that she will always be warden regardless of choice in awakening, and she has a chance to look after for her sister. Yeah, that's a possibility as well. Yeah, you go in the expedition. Thank you, Chapelmon. Um, but I really haven't thought about Velana. I'm trying to work with what the game has, right? Velana is an option, but since she never actually appears in the game, yeah, that's there's always a limit to how far I'm willing to stretch what's already there and make changes. So Velana is a good option B, right? Oh, another thing, if you're gonna make Anders gay, make them gay. Anders is gay. Anders not bi. I'm sorry, he's like full on gay. Just saying, my 2 cents. It's fine. He's full on gay. no problem. Yeah. Other characters might be bi, and they also make them less hawk sexual, like, like, oh, a femme hawk goes like, hey, I like you very much. It's like, sorry, babe, I'm not into you. It can happen, right? Um, Also make the way he relates to the hawk be less creepy, because he's always seems like, oh, I'm in love with you. It's like, dude, we just talked. What? And there's no way to put him down gently. Like, listen, yeah, you may want to take a chill pill there, dude. Being all adults and all. But that's one. That's leaving Anders behind. And by this time, you basically recruited everybody. Everybody's willing to go to Deep Rose because Hawks helped them out one time for no profit for themselves. Well, that would work if you're the selfless Hawk, but not the selfish Hawk, or the saints, the humorous Hawk, right? That doesn't work. And that's a good thing to go to the Deep Roads, but it doesn't justify them staying around afterwards. This is where in the second part, in Act Two, is when you meet the real villains, the Kunari, especially the military aspect. And second, you start making decisions, because now you have money, but you don't have political power. So you're in your middle class home. Maybe you get mechanics where you can organize your home and pretty it up because it's your first home. You start making moves like actually buying properties, not only investing in the mine, but actually buying properties in Kirkwall, and having a bigger Kirkwall with more places to go, and you actually can get a profit from those buying. So kind of like GTA Vice City, where you actually could buy businesses, and even earlier games, right? So that you're flexing your economic muscle, and you start making decisions. Like, for example, let's talk about Aveline. You can decide to Aveline to have her join the guard. You encourage her to. She says, oh, "I'm going to join the guard. We've been here together, but I want to set down some roots. I want to do some, I want to settle down." Say, "Okay, fine. I'm going to help you join the guard because, hey, it would be very good for me to have a friend in the guard instead of just simply just she's joining the guard, right? It's something that you get something out of it, and it's not like, hey, one day, hey, she's just one member of the guard. It's like, okay, cool, I guess, and she kind of helps you because reasons, because you helped her one. You actually help her kill her husband. I guess that's if you're gonna do a solid to somebody. That's and you helped her get to Kirkwall, which is pretty good, but that can only last so long. Um, and eventually you can say, "Hey, I heard about these." Especially if you're in the Carta or working now with the Carta, whatever. You heard rumors about, back deals going down. Yeah, it is her having. It is indeed right, but there also the confluence, right? She says to you, "I want to, do something." Things like, "Okay, I'm going to help you do that," or no, or convince her to stay, be your second in command, your bodyguard, whatever, right? Um, it shows that she has her own motivations, but then those motivations, in essence, clash with Hawk's motivations in a way that doesn't make sense for her to just stick around and be a party member. She just becomes a guard, especially captain of guard. The reason is that she just got captain guard. She has, she doesn't have any reason to patrol. She has no reason to go out and adventure with Hawk and leave her job behind. The job is very important, full time job. So, you know, on the other hand, if it's a situation where Hawk actually says, "Yeah, oh, you're thinking about joining the guard? Yeah, I'm going to help you with that," or say, "No, hey, I want you to. You're too valuable to me. I'm going to pay you more money, and you're going to be my bodyguard or my muscle, whatever." Which could make Carver angry, because it's like, well, what am I being? What am I and my big sword and my heavy armor? Am I not good enough for you? I'm not family. You don't trust family, so you start having those tensions, right? Your reasons for being friendly, but also being a rival as well. So you start making moves and becoming more and more important in the city. You also start expanding the city, right? You have an extra level of city, so the city's bigger, and you start going. You make investments on the Blooming Rose, or in fact, I would have a situation where you can mark each level of the city by the quality of the brothels. Like the Blooming Rose would be the expensive brothel, and you have a brothel that's middle for the artisans, and you have a brothel for investing on the brothel. I mean, I would borrow a page from Yakuza and have like a mini game with the ladies and gentlemen of the night, because the brothel is unisex. It has male and female prostitutes. Um, so I would have like a mini game like that, right? That you're managing the brothel and getting info, and that also would help you get information, stuff like that. But also you're making other moves, right? You're looking to get into the high society, and then you start literally trafficking on your siblings because having a sibling, a brother and sister, especially a sister, that's in a medieval setting, fantasy, medieval, Renaissance setting. That's an important asset. You want to marry them off, right? You may want your brother to marry into a family, and so bring the wife and their dowry uh, with them, right? Or you want your sister to marry off and have a connection with a family, right? But for example, the thing is that your sister is a mage, and families are scared of having mage bloodlines in their families because of the Templars. So, that would be very interesting thing of quest and things that you have to do in order to deal with the situation, right? Um, Fenris, right? You if you recruit Fenris, you can have Fenris encourage them either be a member of your organization and again be another bodyguard, whatever, and say, hey, listen, these elves, they be good for the elves to have somebody to be a champion of them, right? Think about that, backing them up. I'll help you get rid of your. And by Act Two, I would completely deal with the whole slave situation, which is another thing. The problem that this game has, that it takes the quest instead of start stop start stop. So you would have quests like dealing with Fenris slaves issue would be an entire quest line that we've done within Act Two, right? And whether you help or not Fenris in this situation, you gain their loyalty, or your rivalry, or they just die. You end up even killing them, right? They become your rival, because or they go away or something, right? And Isabella would be a situation, right, where you're like, hey, you're a ship captain, you have connections with smugglers and pirates. Hey, you can get me stuff that I need. I can get things out of the city that I need. That starts all the one in Act Two, and Act One, and continues in Act Two. And of course, she becomes critical because she has to do everything with it. She has connections with what's happening with the Kunari, right? Um, Also, I wouldn't have as many time skips. I wouldn't have the 6 months, 6 months to a year time skip in the first part, and then maybe have a time skip which is about a year or so. Not these huge times of the 3 years and 7 years. There's no need for them. It's better in this case, it would be better for the players to act out these things and do things. So you might be thinking about marrying off your sister, but she resents it because you're setting it up with some idiot son from a wealthy family, right? It's like, I don't want that. So maybe you can have a situation where trying to find the right family for her to marry into, if you decide to go that route, um, might be important. Or maybe you decide, especially if you're a non-mage hog, that maybe she should join the tower, the circle, right? If for no other reason than having somebody inside the circle that's related to you it's of great importance, right? Or you want to protect your family from the Templars and you're willing to sacrifice your sister to do that. And if you do that, then she's not going to be very happy about it, right? Um, she might even become a rival and make what happens in Act Three more difficult because she's there saying, "Hey, my brother or my sister, my sibling is a jackass, and I don't want anything to do with them." Um, and with other characters, right? Varric's already well positioned. I think Varric will be the character that's always loyal to you, like in the original game, so you don't have to position them. But you might want to deal with him, helping him with his brother, resolving that issue in Act Two, and that will be the end of that. Plus, how you do it, how you support Varric. Do you have Varric be more on the side of the merchant clan, or you encourage him to become more of a Carden, right? And when we get to Act Three, that determines which resources you have for the final battle in Act Three. Uh, Anders, again, supporting Anders and having Anders be more clear about his support of his mages and his politicking. And again, what Anders does in Act Three would not happen. He would be more clear, more open with you about what's going on. Again, if you go with Anders and support Anders, he's basically is stands for the mages. When you go against Anders, that means that it makes it much harder to deal with the mages, right? Um, You also have more dealings with the Templars, and if you manage to, what's his name from the first and third game, Curly. Let me see if I have his name. Um, um, what's his name? He was in the first two games. Chad, help me out. He's a Templar. Helping the Templars with their missions and siding with certain groups. For example, if when you do a mission, you for the Templars, you side with them being more strict, then you're gaining points with the Templars. So again, when Act 3 comes along, you're in a much better position with the Templars. But if you side against with the mages against the Templars, then again that has a thing that can happen later on. So eventually, because you're rising to power, you need the Viscount, right? And you eventually you approach the Viscount and said, "Listen, I'm a person with a lot of money. My mother used to be a noble here. I just want to be part of the nobility. What do I got to do?" It's like, okay, we always need people with money. This is a trading city. This is a city state. It's merchant princes and all that. You got good connections with the Merchants Guild through Varric, etc. So if you've done some good work for me and from some others, sure, I will allow it if you can bring proof of that. And then you start the personal quest of finding a way to get your nobility back. You're not simply doing it because of your mother. You're doing it because that's what you want as a character. You as a noble hawk, you want to do to restore the name of your family, right? Cynical hawk is like doing it for chits and giggles. Like I don't like what you wanna basically slap your uncle and put him in his place, right? You think he's being fishy, and it's like this guy screwed us over. I'm gonna get back at him. And Selfish Hawk is all about the power, you know, in any way, shape, or form. In fact, you might have a situation where you can literally fake your a Selfish Hawk might even fake have fake documents, create fake documents, a forgery, that's the word I was looking for, and say, oh yeah, we were nobles all along, and my mother can swear to it, and yeah, here we are, right? And that's when you're setting up yourself for Act 3. You're not going to be in the mansion until you hit Act 3, not Act 2, Act 3. You have another house, but that's in Act 2. But of course, there's a big problem, something that is outside of Hawk's control, but eventually Hawk gets wind of, and it's the Qunari, the tensions with the Qunari. And you have some other quests that have to do with Qunari that we a lot of Act 2. Eventually, you get the confrontation, right? Qunari are fed up. They want their book. They see the filth that is, Kirkwall. And by this time, you are literally invested in Kirkwall. You have positioned different people in different places. You have invested money and resources on businesses and homes. Right? You own your own home. Um, you have tried to position your family members, those who are still friendly to you, with marriages and the like. So you're invested in Kirkwall. You're no longer somebody who is a refugee. You have spent time, effort, and money to be in Kirkwall and you're searching for power in Kirkwall. And this jackhole Oxman is gonna break it up, right? You may try the peaceful approach, the diplomatic approach. That listen, we don't have to wreck this place, and you might end up betraying Isabella to them. It's like, find out what Isabella's doing and say, no, here's the book and here's her, and or just give her the book, but you also betray Isabella, right? If you actually hand Isabella to them, then something's going to happen with her. If you hand her the book, Isabella's going to, oh, screw you. You're going to regret it. She becomes your rival, even if you romance her. Then they're going to break it off. And if you side with Isabella, you keep her and the book, but you have to fight, the Qunari. So you become the champion of Kirkwall. So by deed and by title, you become a noble. Your family's elevated. The Viscount is dead. Now essentially you become leader of Kirkwall in all but its name, which is what happens in the game. Except that now you have the Qunari are not gone for whatever reason. Even if you turn the book back to them, the leaders of the Qunari decide that this was too much, that Kirkwall has to pay for defying the Qunari, that Kirkwall broke the alliance, the treaties between it and the Qunari, so they're outside of those treaties. So they're going to send a punitive expedition to punish and literally burn Kirkwall to the ground. There was a rebellion once. Now they want to finish it off. Right? They want to make an example of Kirk. So depending on who still is loyal to you, you have options. If you side with the mages, the Templars, most of them, you can cow some people out, and have them stay, but most of them are gonna leave. Like, oh, you wanna do this? Okay, um, what's her name? She leaves the city, right? And she leaves and says, I'm gonna be back with an army. And she goes, she recruits armies from nearby cities, and she's gonna besiege the city, right? But if you side with the mages and side against the Templars, if you side with the Templars, the mages say, "Oh, screw you! Um, we're gonna rebel, right? Because you're siding against our oppressors who want to enslave us and kill us all." And so they form an internal rebellion, and most of them will, in fact, at that point, because they've been pushed against the wall, they would, in fact, side and become blood mages and summon demons and all that out of desperation. But they won't do that if you side with them. And in fact, if you side with them, they basically are artillery pieces, and they provide healing and magic protection and all that. If you go through the characters, always having Barrick on your side is always good. Uh, um, Having Isabella, if you betray Isabella to the Qunari, she comes back in chains and basically gives information, turns traitor, and gives information to Qunari about the defenses, the seaward defenses of the city, because she knows about, she's a pirate, she knows how to get in and out. But if she's with you, you can tell her, hey, I want you to be my captain of the ships. You're gonna defend the city on the seaside. You're gonna use the ships that we have, arm them the best we can, maybe put some mages in them, etc., and go out and maybe not defeat the fleets, but really weaken the attack, the naval attack, that because primarily the Qunari would come by sea, right? So it becomes easier or harder depending on your relationship with Isabella. Uh, Depending on your relationship with Aveline, you could have an elite guard, city guard. They can also double as an army. They already battle tested the first against the Qunari the first time around. But if she's not, then the guard is corrupt and weak, and they're going to be more liability than anything else, right? They may have an axe to grind, especially if an old enemy from your smuggling and or mercenary days comes back and entices them not to follow orders, right? Um, who else? Anders. Again, Anders is critical. If you side with Anders, you have a situation where you're siding with the mages essentially, and he rallies the mages around him. He becomes a revolutionary figure, um, and gets to survive. He actually survives. He can survive the Dragon Inquisition, right? But if you side against him, you actually probably gonna end up killing Anders, and maybe in his death throes he does the thing where he blows up the Chantry, but that's not necessary in this version of the game, so that's fine. Who else? In fact, Carver. You have a good chance of having the Templar side with you if Carver becomes a member of the Templars, right? But however, say you can have an even split where you side with Anders, but you sent your sister to the Circle of Magi. She's still ticked off at you. She becomes your rival, and she actually leads or joins with the rebel faction, and so making your mages much weaker. Versus if she's free, or she somehow was still your friend, even though she was a member of the circle, both of them can essentially team together and make the mages even stronger. Even bring back mages that have escaped to come back into the city in order to help you out. And then kind of becomes the center of the rebellion, right? Um, Meryl or Milana could help you out with the Dalish, recruit Dalish to help you out, especially against as being skirmishes and run interference with the attacking armies from the land side, particularly the Templars. That the Templars are the ones who are attacking, or help you hunt down escaping mages and whatever if they're trying to bring forces from the outside, reinforcements. Fenris, I don't like him in the original game, but now if Fenris, if you if you position Fenris in a way that he's, you encourage him to use his abilities, if he's still around, to train the city elves, then you have that they make your city militia that much stronger. because Fenris is a good fighter, right? And he knows about insurgent tactics. I mean, he was used to attack insurgents in up in the north, right on the side of his master, and he knows how to. Especially if the mages go against you, using Fenris to hunt down mages is pretty good. Could be a good counterpoint. Use the city elves to engage tie up the mage rebels and deal with it, right? So all the characters in your party, I haven't forgotten anybody, yeah, would have a role in the final battle. Either you have these two forces coming in from the outside to crush Kirkwall, or you have one force coming to out to crush Kirkwall, but also internal division. And your choices and how you deal with it save the city. If you succeed, you save the city. Uh, but leave a giant question about whether Kunari are going to come back or not, etc. Or but at the same time, either way, you have served as a central figure in touching up this whole Mage rebellion, because maybe when what's leader of the Templars, when she went to get help from other cities, she also sent um, a request for a potentially an exalted march to the Most Holy, and the Most Holy said, "No, we're not going to do that. We don't have enough information." Right? She's still reading the reports from the situation and saying, "No, I don't have enough here." Right? So we're not going to do an exalted march. So she comes in with an army, but she's much weaker than she could otherwise be, having all of Thetis and Thetis join up to crush Kirkwall. Now she has volunteers, mercenaries, and the like from the other city states in the march, which is not the same thing. So you survive, and you not only become the champion of Kirkwall, but the hero of Kirkwall. Right? You become the ruler of Kirkwall. You have risen to power. And some of your family members may be alive, some of them might be dead. I would keep your mother around. In fact, I would have her have a change of heart. The whole thing with the side story where she gets murdered and turned into a zombie. These are that thing. That was so distasteful. I mean, that could be something that could still be in the game, but could happen. But I would give him give Hawk a better chance, especially if the investigations are done better earlier, to stop it and even save a couple of lives. And doing that could have more of the nobility on Hawk's side. Yeah, yeah, it's unnecessary, right? Um, oh, ironically, this is another thing: is that if you side against Fenris, you could actually have support from the mages from the north. Why am I forgetting all this term? I know all these terms and I'm forgetting them. Uh, they could smuggle in mages to help you, and weapons and even mercenaries, right? As a thank you for returning their property to them. And so you make these choices, and Act Three is all about truly defending Kirkwall and protecting Kirkwall. And how well Kirkwall survives or not depends on the decisions you made. Who lives and who dies depends on who you have rivalries with, as opposed to friendships with, right? Including, you could end up having to fight. For example, if you side with the mages, and Carver becomes a Templar, right? Because says screw you, I'm going to be doing my own thing, which can happen. You may have to end up killing Carver, and I think that would be more dramatic, especially if you have an entire game narrative to establish that rivalry with Carver, and maybe you look back at all the possibilities that you missed, that you could have had Carver on your side. And the same thing with Bethany, right? If you had a relationship with Bethany, but it went south because of your decisions, you may have to end up you killing or exiling your sibling, right? And I think that would be far more powerful than just having them die or be taken away just by fiat, right? They have their motivations, you have your motivations, and your inability to either enforce your motivations upon them or convince them or harmonize them with them. In fact, that would be cool, right? The three choices you would, a selfless hawk would want to harmonize their goals with the goals of their siblings. There's the cynical hawk, the humorous hawk, if you will, would try to, fast talk the way, say, hey, listen, this is best for everybody. But really, what you're doing is convincing to put your motivations ahead of theirs and just taking it. And a rival hog would simply say, "Screw you! You do what I want, or else." And there's a good chance that one of them or both might say, "Nope." If you play the game very badly, you can end up with both of them be your rivals, right? And be totally screwed, right? Make that final battle, which would be very similar to the final battle in Origin, uh, but a little more complex, more have a bigger city, um, be better, right? And you end up saving Kirkwall, and the future is open, right, to what's happened. I'm not gonna touch the DLC because hmm, I don't think it's necessary. All this should be. We're talking about the original script here. The DLC really don't contribute much. Mark of the Assassin could give you more resources depending who you side on. Mark of the Assassin, uh, which is the only DLC that actually I give a damn, right? And that would be it, right? The mine thing, that's the thing I didn't touch about. I would compress that. I only have like 2 visits to the mine, right? Fighting the original drakes and then the big dragon. I have to like fight the drakes and fight the bigger drake and then have finding the dragon. If you're gonna have a dragon fight, that's a good place to have it. I'm not really gonna talk about the mechanics too much. I would expand the city, and I actually would model the city closer to uh, real life city states in the Hessian League or the city states of Italy in the Renaissance, rather than this sort of spiky alternate fantasy alternate world city. Give it more flavor, um, more provincial, tighter corners, have more places to go. And I would also mechanically, I would have a situation where the day night cycle would not just be a toggle. I would keep the toggle because it's a nice way of speeding up time, right? If you need to. But I would have it so it's you can say decide go from 1 to 1, like literally if it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon on a Saturday you're playing in real life, then it will be daylight, at least daylight in your game. Two all the way to like twice as fast, 3 times as fast, 5 times as fast, 10 times as fast, and I always leave the toggle there. So think, I'm not gonna wait 15 minutes or 5 hours to get to this point. I just toggle, go to nighttime, do the mission at night, and then toggle back to daytime when I need to. So toggle would be more like a speeding up the clock kind of situation. And I know you can do Skyrim when you can put some hours, but this would just be a toggle, so no problem there. And that's it. That would be my script doctoring on Dragon Age 2. Um, I read what some of the tweets from David Geyer. Uh, some of the stuff that I talked about, expanding the city, that he's in favor of. But for the most part, I would go way beyond what he's certainly pushing. But that will be it. So thank you already for coming. We will continue with more streams. I know my streams are being I'm not being streaming as much. Basically, I find out that I'm not gonna go back to Yakuza for now. I know I'm leaving it halfway, but it's not doing it for me. So I'm gonna try something else, uh, probably during the week, just to change up things. And on Saturday, I believe we're gonna have the podcast. We're gonna move the podcast with Chabomon to Saturday, temporarily for this Saturday. We're probably gonna be talking about the subject of director's cuts and such stuff like that. But for now, thank you already for coming. Um, I promise that these will, after getting edited, will go to the YouTube channel as they should. So you want to catch up with the VODs there or here, you can do so. And if you want to support the channel, there are many ways to do so, including subbing, following, dropping bits, and subscribing. So thank you for coming, and as always, we'll see you when we see you. Bye bye, everybody.